session 6 of God's plan. If we're to follow God's plan, then we have to have a firm sense of what our mission is. And of course, our mission is to follow Jesus and to show him to the world. If we don't have this vision, then we're going to just sort of drift around and be easily distracted or misled. The people who are successful in life are the ones who are clear about where they're heading. They're not necessarily the most talented ones, but they're the ones who have a clear vision about what they want to accomplish. And as Christians, we need to have that clear vision too, what we want to accomplish for Jesus, because there are always going to be immediate but rather surface gratifications offered to us, and they'll lead us on a different path. So a good question to ask ourselves is, what is my mission in life? When we're clear about that, it's going to be much easier to know when to say yes and when to say no. A second question is our God big enough for us to say no to things without worrying about we might be missing out on something? So a businessman who's offered a promotion with a much bigger salary and status in his company, but he knows that he'll be called upon to make some pretty unethical decisions. He has to ask the question, is his belief in God and God's plan big enough that he would forego the status and the wage? If he knew that God's all-powerful and all-loving, it's going to be much easier for him to say, no, I'm not going to do that. If he doesn't really trust God, then it may be hard to resist that, the good wage, the status, and he may easily be able to justify, well, what they're doing is not so bad after all. A third question is, if we say yes to something, is it worth it? Because when we say yes to one thing, it means there's less of us to go around to do other things. So we've got less time and less energy. So is the yes, is what we've said yes to, is it actually worth it? Jesus had an amazing sense of mission. He knew when to say no to Satan. Satan approached him in the desert. He'd been fasting for 40 days. He was hungry. Satan comes along and says, well, if you're the Son of God, why don't you turn these stones into bread? Jesus was able to say, of course not, don't be silly. He knew that he could feed 5,000 people on a small boy's lunch. Why would he bother turning a stone into bread? So then Satan tempted him, well, let's see, you jump off the highest point of the temple and just prove that you are the Son of God, because angels will come and help you. Why would he do that when he knew that though dead and buried for 3 days, he would rise again to new life? So Satan challenged him again. Just bow down and worship me and I'll hand all these lands over to you. Why would he do that when he knew that one day he would sit on the throne and that he would banish Satan for eternity? Jesus knew his mission. And with his eyes fixed firmly on that mission, he knew when to say yes and when to say no. So if our eyes are fixed firmly on Jesus and firmly on his call to show him to the world, then God's plan for us will unfold as we know what to say yes to and what to say no.
He's the God of